Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. This is Marilyn Shannon, and we are here at the Breaking Free Show. And I'm delighted and I appreciate it. I know that your time is very special, and I honor you for being here today and joining us each and every week. Or if this is your first time, thank you for coming. If this is your millionth time, thank you for being here. We always delight ourselves in bringing the most interesting guests, subject matters, maybe some things we don't always think about or that we do, but we don't realize how far to take them or what to do with it, a philosophy, an idea, a new invention, something that might inspire us, spark us to greater heights. And that's what we're here for. And that's what freedom is all about. So before we get started with our guest today, I want to say hi to Amnon.
Hello,
Good
Marilyn.
morning,
How are
Amnon.
you? Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. Amnon is our oh, what is the name?
I'm just your
My boy,
technician.
oh, and more than that, let me tell you, everything good?
Everything is fine.
Yeah, good. You had a
Yeah.
good weekend?
It was a good weekend. A lot
Good.
of work.
A lot of work. Doing
So
what?
just working
Just
on.
around
Yeah. Yeah.
but anything change in our, like, technology with our shows or anything that we should all be aware of?
No,
All right,
nothing
because
changed.
I'm not really does keep up with trends and things that are happening to make our shows really and truly the most professional online broadcast you can find. So I appreciate that. And just want to remind you all that anytime during the show, here is an open invitation for you to join us anytime you want to comment, question, anything. You can call in at 919-518-9773, or you can come in at Skype, and that's computers, that's plural, then the number two, K voice, and you will come in on Skype voice. And then, if you notice, we also have a live chat going on during the show as well, and you can join us there. Just put your name, nickname, whatever you like under our video, and you can comment, ask questions, just share information right there. If you are watching us on Facebook, I don't want to forget you. You are more than welcome to come over to nissancommunications.com and watch the show from there. You will be watching live, but you also can comment and we will see your comments there. So please feel free to partake in our show today because it's really going to be interesting and it's something that I think we don't give enough credit to. And in order to go on, I'm going to ask my guest, Kate Nasser, the people skills coach, to come on and tell us a little bit about herself. And we'll get on with our show. Hi, Kate.
Hey, how are you today,
I'm
Merle?
good. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks.
Good. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm happy to. You and I always have great conversations.
We do. So I think everybody, go get a piece of paper and a pencil because there's no telling what's going to come out of these two mouths. The sky is the limit. Because you're going to see that Kate and I will have aha moments as we're talking, right?
It's true.
That will be
Oh,
ahas. So who are you, Kate?
I'm Kate Nasser. I'm known as the People Skills Coach, and I spend all my work life and even my personal life, but especially my work life, on positive people skills for success in business and in life. That's who I am.
And you have written a new book.
Yes, I'm very excited about this book, Leading Morale.
Which is, you had to have been inspired to have come up with a title like that, Leading Morale, because initially I had a hard time understanding what that meant. But as I got into it, now I have a better idea of what leading morale means. So tell everybody, what does leading morale mean?
So most of the time, most people think of boosting morale or uh, reigniting morale. In other words, sort of moments, where you have some special event for your employees. But morale is not an event. It's not a pep rally. Leading morale means that everything you say and do as a leader affects how people experience their work, experience working with you. In other words, the whole picture of morale, you have to lead it with your every word and every breath and every step.
So it would be, and certainly not the same conversation, but leading morale would be a similar thing as leading respect or leading compassion.
Actually, the word that you will see a lot in my book, in fact, I have it at the beginning and then at the end and throughout, the word is dignity. And I don't know if you want me to go through it now, but I had an aha moment at the end of writing the book. This was a very interesting phenomenon.
Yeah.
I kept using the word respect, and that's extremely important. But I kept thinking, there's more, but it's not quite the word. And trust and all of these things, right? And then I had written the whole manuscript for the book and was taking a little break before I went back, to really get into the editing of it. And I'm always reading books, I'm always reading blogs, following the news, keeping up with all the thought leaders. And I came across a book called Dignity at Work. Dignity. So I bought the book immediately, devoured it on a weekend, and realized that what I had been writing about for a year in this manuscript was dignity. Morale is all about dignity. And there was just another study, I read about it, Friday, it's a Gallup poll in the workplace, that again, why do people leave? They leave their boss, they leave their leader, they leave their manager when they don't like it. But what they are leaving is this assault on their dignity.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I just had a thought, because a lot of people make it about the money. It's not about the money all the time.
Not all the time.
No, it's not. It is about how people feel.
Yes.
They will stay for less if they are respected, valued, if they feel dignity, if their morale is up. So I know that this is a really interesting topic. I just want to hold up Kate's book a second. Here it is. And we're going to be talking a lot about this book and the information in it. So here you go. And it's on Amazon, and we'll get into that too. There you go. There you go. On Amazon. Okay. So, and the topic of morale is not just limited to huge teams, because, right? Because in the entrepreneurial world, whether people work for you or not, and they work with you, morale is at the core, dignity is at the core of all the connections that you could have with even outsourcing. So keep that in mind.
With outsourcing, there's a slight difference in that when you're an outside provider, for example, I'm an outside provider, right? I go into major corporations, I do training on teamwork, customer service, leadership, and all of that. And because they are my customers, I accommodate them more than I would accommodate my boss if I were working full time for one company.
And how do you do that?
Well, because in a customer relationship, when I'm going in, I know that I don't know everything that's going on in that organization. Just the same way that somebody's working at, I don't know, like a Staples or a Best Buy or whatever. Someone comes rushing in, they're under pressure, they need something, and maybe they're not as courteous, and you don't necessarily stop and have a discussion about dignity. You, as a seller or as a provider, overlook some of those, not so nice behaviors and try to find out what the customer really needs and provide it. But when you are a leader in an organization and you have people working, they are your employees and they're there every single day, that's a different dynamic. And you have to understand that daily dignity is essential to good morale. And it's not just about, let's have a free pizza day or bring your pet to work day. And there are even stories I have in the book, real life stories from interviews I did. This one woman said, we had bring your pet to work day. We had free food. We even had kegs of beer. I don't know too many companies that do that, but they did. and their employer took them to these exotic island vacations. But when they got there, the leaders used to shoot these Nerf guns or something at the employees. In other words, they thought that just because they were giving them free things that they could treat these employees any way they wanted. And then these leaders were upset and insulted when nobody wanted to have dinner with them on the vacation. And you're like, what? People care more about dignity than they do about free pizza or a vacation.
Right. And it's sustainable. It's got longevity. It's not where you come in there. If you go into a business the day after they've had their Christmas party, everybody's going to be in a great mood, right?
Right.
But if you go in the day, weeks after, months after the Christmas party, and there's been nothing, there's going to be a difference, isn't there?
Well, and not only is there not nothing in terms of events, but what goes on a daily basis is what keeps dinging away at people's sense of dignity and self-esteem and therefore morale.
Exactly. So I know I can go, I go into Trader Joe's. Everybody, for the most part, people seem happy. They seem, they seem cooperative. They want to help. There's something going on.
You betcha.
Right? So what's happening in those places?
I will tell you that places like Trader Joe's, certainly Nordstrom's years ago wrote that book about it. And it's about, if you want your employees to have this incredible sense of morale and tied to your business so that they're almost your own brand ambassadors of sorts, then you have to allow them, certainly they have to understand the mission and the vision of the organization, which most leaders do. But then the leaders have to treat the employees the way they want the employees to treat the customers. There has to be a sense of respect and honor and appreciation and recognition, all of these things that some leaders think are sort of fluffy, and maybe it even weakens people if you treat them too nicely, which is all hogwash, by the way. And when you put all of that in place, and all the leaders and all the managers and all the supervisors have to be trained so that their daily interaction is seamlessly supportive of employee dignity. And that's what you see going on at Trader Joe's, at Nordstrom's. There are other companies too. Those are the two that, would come to mind here.
Yeah. And it also reminds me of times when I've been in a really, doesn't have to be an expensive restaurant. I can just go to a really nice, whatever kind of restaurant, and the waiter, whatever staff is waiting on me, I am the customer, and they are treating me as they are being treated.
Right.
And you can tell.
And you can tell that it's possible to have a wonderful employee experience program where you're doing all those things as leaders. And it's possible to have an employee who just does not want to serve others and does not even want to be a part of this very positive experience. It doesn't happen very often, because what companies are learning is that they need to put this kind of program into their hiring. So as they interview people, they are assessing whether or not these people are good at service. Are they good at teamwork? Because leading morale is not just for organizations that are in the service industry. You need great morale in every industry and every company. But we tend to think about it initially for service-oriented businesses because that's what the customers see front and center.
Exactly. And, it's hard, it's difficult, challenging for companies, big or small, to find the right employees to hire to fit certain jobs, certain criteria. So when you find people and you're just training, it takes a lot of money to train people. So to keep the dignity up and the morale up so you don't have to go through that heartache and have people leaving is huge.
And it's interesting because it doesn't take millions of dollars. It takes focused training at the leadership, managerial, supervisory levels where they are first involved in understanding. You can't have a training program that talks at leaders, that talks at managers. This is what you need to do, because for them to buy into it, they need to be able to search into their own beliefs and realize where their own subconscious beliefs are actually blocking their leading morale. I just wrote a blog post just recently, and it was all about, are your sometimes you'll have the leaders are very into the higher level leaders. Yes, definitely. We're enlightened. We want a high morale workplace. And then they turn to their managers and they say, go ahead, do it. Set up an empowerment, high morale program and make sure there are metrics so that we know if we're doing well.
Right.
And it was about 3 years ago, I had a big company, very large company, asked me to come in, and that's what the leaders said. So they wanted me to start with the metrics. And I said, first, we have to figure out what your managers believe. We have to understand what they believe. And surprise, surprise, it turns out that half of the managers in that organization believed, get this, that an employee needs to earn the right to be have high morale and earn the right to be empowered. And earn the right to participate and to suggest, ideas. Well, what did you hire these people for? And people think, well, lower level workers don't have the capacity. That's baloney. You hire people in and basically say to them, you have to follow the rules for 6 months before you earn the right to be empowered or to have a voice. What? And so when I went back to the leaders and I said, okay, before we do any metrics of how you're going to succeed at this, first we have to reshape the beliefs here, because they're not going to do it every single day. They're going to interact with these employees probably 5-6 times a day, depending on the roles and the transactions and things like that.
You got to be the change. I mean,
you got to believe it.
Yeah, you got to believe in
the change.
Absolutely. I mean, it all has to work together.
Right.
I mean, so, I'm going to say, Chris, who's my manager and different things and has been working with me for, I don't know how many years, and I know she's listening. And I don't know how I could do what I do without her. And there's just she and I, of course. I mean, I'm not, of course, runs the show, but without Chris's help, I couldn't. And I think it's really important that she knows how much I appreciate her, because we're just two people. And so I know that her morale is lifted or better when she knows that I appreciate her.
Absolutely.
And it's just the two of us. So in any organization where, you have the ability and to do this. And so I think I'd love to talk to you about, let's start with some small business, right? Like a 2-person, 3-person, 5-person organization. How do you suggest people, employees, leaders, bring in lift morale? And then maybe I also want to ask you and here's 2 questions. How in a small business does a leader, bring in morale, lift it up, and be thinking about what happens when they don't? What's up to the employee? How does the employee, because sometimes it isn't coming from the leader, it's coming by osmosis from the employees that find a way to get, as a leader, because look, leadership does not just happen because you have a title. Leadership happens because you say so. You say you're a leader. I'm a leader, whether I have a title or not. And it is not a control freak thing. It is truly leadership. And you can lead from anywhere. So it is all of our responsibility at wherever we are, whether it's at the top of the bus or the bottom of the bus, wherever we are, to be accountable and responsible for lifting morale wherever we go. So, those are two questions. How do leaders do it in small businesses, and how do employees do it? And you can
Oh,
answer whichever one you want first.
okay. Well, certainly, the good news is that whether it's a large business or a very small business, mid-size, it really doesn't matter. The way to start uh, making sure that lifting morale, leading morale, as I call it, because if you have to lift it, it means that it's already not so great.
It's heavy.
So,
It's heavy.
right.
Right.
So, in terms of leading morale, the place to start, believe it or not, as mundane as it may sound, is by having everybody define what is morale. There are a huge number of assumptions, some true, some not so true, about morale. Some people think morale is constant happiness. Well, this is not true. There are going to, in fact, morale is what keeps you going even when times get tough. So it isn't constant happiness. So step one for everybody, and it could be just, for example, in your case, it's you and Chris. It could be a company that has 5 people, 500, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. It doesn't matter. How do people define morale? Because if they define it differently, no matter what the leader does, the leader's not going to hit the mark because the other person or persons is defining it differently. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the second question, and we'll get back to more of the how-tos of leading morale in a minute, but you posed a very interesting question. What responsibility do employees have for leading their own morale? And of course, people have to be responsible for what I call people are responsible for their daily mindset. But in most organizations, and it may be different when it is 2 people like you and Chris, for example, but certainly when there are more than 2 people, the problem when leaders say, employees, you are responsible for your own morale, something, you should be speaking up. But the big question is, what happens when they speak up? Are they ignored? Are they sort of put a mark on that person? That person's a troublemaker. Do you take revenge, even passive aggressively, against employees who speak up? So although as leaders we like to think, well, employees have responsibility for this too, the bottom line is that there are conditions in most companies that have somewhat bad morale that stopped or inhibited those employees from speaking up.
So in certain cases, you have a choice on whether you stay or go.
Right, but that does exactly. So what happens is that, you don't like things, you feel your dignity is being assaulted, you're demoralized by the manager's behavior toward you, by their comments, by the fact that it's all about them, whatever all these conditions are. And the leader shows no sign of wanting to learn, wanting to have feedback, growing and changing and evolving. So you generally start your own job search. And then people start to leave. There are companies that are revolving doors or departments that are revolving doors. And so many times people think, well, it just doesn't pay enough. Well, there are studies to show that certainly people have to make enough money to live on, even to start saving for their future and so forth. Money is important to a point. But there are people getting paid good salaries who leave. And companies like to think that they're leaving for a higher salary or better benefits, like more vacation time. The unenlightened companies do not think that these people are leaving because their dignity is being indirectly and directly assaulted. That's the problem.
And I guess a lot of companies don't even realize that that's even an issue. So,
And yet all the studies keep saying it. People leave their boss. People leave the leader. They leave the manager. And again, we just had one of those the other day, another Gallup, poll, and we keep doing the studies, and the studies keep saying the same thing, and yet here we are.
Because helping to raise or lead morale and bring in dignity wherever you are, these are and this is perfect with Kate being a people skills coach, because these are little skills. These are not huge things. These are like a smile, they're a glance, they're a handshake, they're a thank you, they're opening up the door for somebody, it's noticing somebody. These are common skills that go a long way. Kate?
These are definitely skills. It's in what you say. It's in how you say it. It's about listening and honoring other people's talents. In the book, there's a whole chapter on honoring individual talents. And I list 25 talents, because a lot of managers say, well, what are you talking about talent? We have skills. And I say skills are things that anybody can learn. And yes, you certainly recognize their skill level. And sometimes that's what you pay them for, increased training, increased skills, and you pay them more. But a talent is something inside of a person, something that they naturally do well. And when you honor that, when you call it out and you say, hey, Pat, you are great at collaboration. Make sure that you bring that to the table on this project, because boy, do we need your talent.
Absolutely. That seems so obvious, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's it. That increases morale. And then people say to me, but wait a minute, you're not supposed to give individual praise, because that turns people into divas. It makes people non-team players. There is no I in team. More hogwash. First of all, the millennials and the generation now that is what do you call them? Gen Z, I think it is, right? But there's Gen Y, those were the millennials. And I think
I'm too old, I don't know.
Anyway, the ones that are in college now, right? Mm-hmm. Graduating from college, like the ones down in Parkland and, graduating high school, going to college and so forth. So you have all of these. And they grew up in this, what I call collaborative spirit. Everybody got a trophy for participating.
Whoops. Okay, hopefully she's coming back at just the right moment. I know she will. She froze. Okay, so.
And many leaders.
Kate, you froze right there. So go back a little bit. They're graduating. Tell us a little bit more about what you just said, because you froze.
Okay, sorry. So what I'm saying is that the younger generations and millennials, first of all, make up the biggest part of the workforce now, right? And what we have to remember is that they don't believe that there is no I in team. They believe that individual talents combined make the best results. So you have to make sure that you are saying, that's a great talent you have. That's a great talent you have. This is marvelous what you do here. Bring it all together. That's the new model for igniting teams. Not the traditional model that says, there is no I in team, sacrifice, buckle down. They don't, what are you talking about? They don't live this, they don't think it, and you are not going to lead them that way. It's not going to happen.
So you're saying then it's okay to be a strong I without, so it's like a healthy I, without the ego getting in the way in order to create a powerful team. That if everybody on the team thought of themselves as a healthy I, the team would prosper.
Yes, a healthy I that wants to contribute.
Right.
And what I'm trying to share with leaders now in this book and the workshops that I'm starting to do is that we really, those of us who are in the older generation, we're not millennials, we have to evolve. We have to understand that it is very possible to have healthy eyes that join together and they each contribute, and then they learn from each other and they listen. And if you happen to find an egomaniac roaming around your team, you can always address that, because the definition of a team is people that change and evolve together to meet the end result. Most people think a team is a group of people working towards a common goal. I tell people, you're missing the most important part. A healthy team is one that changes and evolves together. So if each person isn't changing and growing, it's not going to be a team. And that means that each person has to be a healthy I, and that we should honor those talents. Can you imagine how wonderful it would feel to have a leader recognize your natural talents and calling all those talents to the table to meet this mission? I mean, I get excited just thinking about
it. And it means to me that all the healthy eyes are simply leaders, because a leader is going to be, is going to stand out. But they're the leader. They're going to stand out somehow. They don't have to stand out because they, look at me. They are the experiment. They are the example. They go first. And
they go first. What I'm saying is that each person on the team, whether they aspire to have the title of leader someday, but if each person on the team contributes the full gamut of what they have inside of them, and respects the person's, this person's talent over here, instead of being jealous of them, then the team becomes this high-performing, agile team that every company spends millions of dollars trying to create.
Well, there is a difference between being the leader and a leader.
Yes.
And just the fact that the leader might be the leader and and my definition of a leader is leading leaders. You're not officially, in my book, a leader if you are not making it your business to create and have leaders all around you. Doesn't mean, exactly. Right? That is my definition.
And picture leadership. Let's say you're doing some kind of innovation project, or you're just doing an operations improvement project, or a customer service improvement effort, whatever it is. And everybody on that team, whether they are just hired and starting at the bottom of the pay scale, or they've risen up for 5 years or whatever, everybody at any moment could be leading pieces of that purely by the talent that they have at that moment. Some people are very good at innovating. They think it, they live it, they breathe it. So sometimes they lead at the beginning of the project. Some people are incredibly good at speaking the truth honestly, but they never insult anybody. So when there's a bit of groupthink that starts to come about, that person can say, wait a minute, we're missing a very important point, and bam, here it is. But because of their natural way of saying it, they don't insult anybody. They don't create scars that you have to remove for 3 years after that. So each person in an organization, again, regardless of skill level, salary level, or whatever, each person dynamically contributes their talent when leaders start to highlight those talents in public for the whole team to see.
Mm-hmm. And that gives each person an opportunity to lead in a certain segment, in a certain part of the team. Not everybody's going to do, like Kate said, not everybody's going to do it the same way. And I think the other very important factor here is we are generational, working together in an organization or in some kind of arena unit of some sort. We are different generations, we're gender, we're cultural, we're all kinds of things.
Yep.
And when you do there's a lot of things you don't have to know about what I do. You may not know what Kate does. You may not know what, your sweet mate does down the hall. You may not know what certain people do, but what you do know is how to be nice. What you do know is how to ask a question, listen to the answer, and be curious about what people are doing. And go ahead, go.
You said the word. I have to jump in. I
Go
can't
ahead.
control. Curious. Morale at the front end and underneath it all, if you picture it in levels, dignity is that rock solid base, because if people feel their dignity is being assaulted, whether they stay there and reassert their dignity or whether they leave and go work someplace else, nothing happens if people feel that their dignity is being assaulted. But once you put that in place and you do your best every single day to respect the dignity of your people, then what you want to create is this curiosity about everybody. And I don't mean petty curiosity about what's going on in somebody's personal life. I mean curious about how people developed their natural talent, curious about what they want to do. When you create this morale, people say, but Kate, the reason we don't focus on morale ostensibly is because it's not something we can touch. We can measure a skill. We can give people training, but how do we foster and what I call lead morale? And it's in your everyday interactions. You want to make sure that you make it as safe to innovate as you do to complain. People will innovate. They'll be curious more if you encourage them to do it, and if you don't make fun of them when their innovation effort, comes up a dud. So it's about a very positive mindset for leading rather than a negative. Let's catch them, let's blame them, let's measure them, let's tell them what they did wrong. And I'm not saying that all organizations are totally negative, but if you look closely, it has a negative feel to it. They're not all the way over on the positive side. And partly it's because leaders that came through earlier generations, unfortunately, were taught and believed that if you're too nice, you make people weak. And they think about themselves that if they honor emotion, if they accept emotion in the workplace, if they tap into it, that they will be too nice. My book has some illustrations in it. I found a wonderful illustrator. I was so lucky. And they were able to illustrate some of the more difficult concepts. And I said to them, it's like some leaders are afraid that if they're too nice, they'll fall into a big bucket and they won't be able to get out.
Well, they don't. Some people don't know how to get uncomfortable at certain things. So listen, before we go on, because we're having a good conversation and I'd love for everybody to join us. So please feel free, once again, 919-518-9773. You can call in. You can come in on our chat room. Just put your name next to the video and you can come there and live chat with us, ask questions. You can also come in on Skype, computers, that's plural 2K voice. And if you're on Facebook, please join us at nissancommunications.com. That's where you'll be watching the show live and be able to chat if you want, because we're not seeing the chat where we are from Facebook. Here's a really good question from the chat, and this is from Chris. For someone searching for a job, what question or questions would they ask to determine whether or not the company looks at morale and dignity? What would you ask in the interview?
That's a great question. If you were interviewing, it depends on who you're interviewing with. if you get to have multiple interviews, which sometimes you do, you first interview with the HR hiring manager, and if you get past them, you get to talk to the manager or the leader you'd be working for, and even some of the people that you would be working with. But at the first level, what I would ask them is, how do you define morale here, and how is morale?
Simple.
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 Because if what you see is a blank stare, if they hesitate, if the person you're asking the question of doesn't have an answer, I mean, if they're shocked that you answer as you ask that question, it doesn't mean that they have bad morale, but it does tell you that it is not a morale-driven culture.
They don't talk about it.
They don't talk about it, which is the more common occurrence. That, in other words, it isn't like at Trader Joe's or at Nordstrom's. They would be able to give you that answer. And whether they were defining morale or company spirit, I mean, it's all the same zone,
Right.
If all you say is, how's morale here? They'll say, oh, it's good. But if you say to them, how do you all define morale? That's the question that they're either going to have an answer right away, or they're going to give you one of those looks.
Exactly.
Great question.
Yeah, it's a good question. So here's another one. So what are you noticing with companies today? Are you seeing a trend towards receptibility, that are people, and I might, are companies being receptive to this notion of morale? Because it doesn't, and here's the other thing which I think is important to bring up. It doesn't cost anything. It's not like making a big party or giving everybody, Friday afternoon off during the summer. It doesn't cost anything to compliment somebody and do one of, something. So are you seeing receptibility? Are you seeing companies, receptive to the idea, or what?
I see them, of course, it depends on the company. The very startups and that sort of thing, I think they feel it in the beginning, because most startups have that spirit of birthing a company of sorts. But for most of the companies that we think about, I'm not sure they're really focusing yet on morale. What they are focusing in on is, this is the question they constantly ask: how do we attract and retain millennials? And behind that question is their awareness that millennials expect what they call quality of life at work. Many of us in the older generations, we went to work, and then we thought, oh, what am I doing this weekend for fun? Or what am I going to do tonight to enjoy myself? Millennials expect a upbeat feeling at work, and that is morale. So I think that companies don't realize that they're specifically talking about morale, which is why I wanted to publish this book. I published it back in March here a few months ago. But that is what they're asking. They're asking, how do we really attract millennials and keep them and get them to contribute their fullest? And the answer is lead morale.
It's funny because I know that, when you hear about what some organizations are doing, who doesn't want to go work for them?
Yeah.
I mean, and so, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that companies that deal in technology, advertising, marketing agencies, they tend to do more around morale. Am I wrong?
I would have to say that I don't 100% agree.
Okay.
For example, you say advertising agencies, marketing agencies. Early in the discussion today, I mentioned that woman who was willing to tell me her story, and I was doing these interviews for the book, and the one that said that they used to give us free beer and all of this, and they took us on exotic vacations, but then they would treat us badly. It was an advertising agency. So, and what happens is that we sometimes think of morale. So I understand where you think that. We sometimes think of morale as extroverted, wow things, and that kind of in our mind fits with companies like advertising agencies and such. But the people working in the advertising agency, even though they have the right to yell out a wild idea, perhaps for the new soda that they're going to be advertising, doesn't mean that they're being treated well.
Right. You can't tell a book by its cover. So you have to ask the right questions, because what you're saying is absolutely. I remember when I was traveling in the advertising world, public relations world, and I would go to an agency and they would be playing games. They had funky furniture, even back years ago.
Oh, yes, they
right?
did.
It does not mean that their employees were any more than a number.
Correct.
So
they were playing games, because just like if you went into a scientific laboratory, you would see them, with microscopes and test tubes and, some kind of big spectrometers or whatever. Those games are the work tools in an advertising agency. It has really nothing to do specifically with leading morale of the employees. It was to generate the creativity to get the job done.
Yeah, I recently spoke at a meeting for Eye Contact, which is an email marketing company, and they're all over, but they're local to the Raleigh, Morrisville area, and I am using them. But I went as my email marketing source. But I went to their company meeting, and the culture of what I saw was a lovely thing. And I have to say it, I saw it, and I was shocked in some ways how complimentary they were of people, how, the managers of different departments, called on people to share what they had discovered, what they were doing. And I should not have had my mouth open. You know what I mean? I should not have been like, I was shocked at all the nice words that were coming out of people's mouths. I shouldn't be shocked at that.
And that's the question. Why are we shocked when we see it?
I don't know. It's because it's different. And I will say that like I said earlier, Chris is my only employee per se, and she's not an employee. She's a friend too. But I would say in the scheme of things, she is my only employee. But if it wasn't for we have an extended family, we all have, or hopefully have, some extended family outside of our immediate family that we can, whether it's friends, whether it's whoever it is that we consider to be our extended family. I believe I have an extended team of people that I work with, contractors, subcontract, whatever it is, that if it wasn't for us understanding subconsciously what morale and dignity would mean, I wouldn't get half the things done and the gifts that I get as a solo entrepreneur as I get. And if it wasn't for what I didn't know to identify as dignity and morale before, talking to Kate, that's what it is. We have that. An exchange of that.
I think one of the reasons we're shocked at it when we see it, like you said, you shouldn't have been surprised, right?
No.
And I think one of the reasons we're surprised, in addition to the fact that it doesn't happen everywhere, but I think that we're surprised almost subconsciously because we learn somewhere, I don't know, somewhere along the way, people have confused being complimentary, being respectful, with being less than truthful. That, in other words, if you are complimenting your employees and you are highlighting their talents and you're treating them well, that you're not really being honest with them, and you could get so much more out of people if you were being brutally honest. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. You can be respectful, you can honor their dignity, you can be civil, courteous, and still speak the truth. And in fact, one of the quotes that I use I have two Twitter chats now, one on the Sunday morning, one that I've been running for years. That's the People Skills chat, but I'm running a lead morale chat now on Thursday nights on Twitter. And my message is at the beginning of every chat: civility does not weaken your message. It helps others to hear it. So we can be nice to people and still speak the truth. If an employee is, basically not meeting the goals, they're not, they're falling behind or whatever, there's absolutely no reason why you can't say to them, here's where you're at. Here's where we really need you to be to fit into the whole team, results. That's dignified, it's respectful, it's civil, and it's honest. This is not difficult.
No, and I do want to I do want to say that no matter what, be the change and do the right thing, even when you are not labeled the manager. If you see a cohort or you see somebody who's doing something, somebody on your team, it is such a great thing to let them know you've noticed.
Absolutely. I mean, in fact, when we say the leader needs to lead morale, what we're trying to make sure that they realize is that they are showing everybody else how to do it with each other.
And we have a caller, right? Hello.
Hi, Marilyn. Hi, Kate. It's Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Hi.
Hey. I wanted to just make a quick comment. And first of all, Marilyn, thank you so much for all the wonderful things you said. It really is an honor to work with you. And having said that, I think one of the things that resonates with me the most is I didn't just graduate and start working with Marilyn. I graduated and I had a couple jobs. And I think when I started to work for Marilyn, I had never worked for anyone like you, Marilyn, before.
Okay. Is that a compliment? Is that a compliment?
It is, yes. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But I think I so appreciate the respect and the dignity that I had from working with you, and I never had that before I started working with you, and I think I just appreciate it so very much because it's something I have not encountered in my past so far. So I think that's important. I don't think a lot of people enjoy it. And when you do, you really don't want to leave, because it's so wonderful.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that.
Just really, I'm so glad you took time to share that with leaders, with Marilyn, because, employees need to give feedback to their leaders too about the things that leaders are doing well and, where they're messing up, as long as the leaders don't take revenge on them. But the most telling thing that Chris just said, she had 2 jobs before she worked for you, and nobody ever treated her with dignity and respect.
Not to the level of working with Marilyn.
And again, there are these myths that leaders have. I just want to sort of make sure everybody understands. We're not saying that leaders have to walk around only saying the sweetsy nice things. That's not what we're saying. And you don't have to be an extrovert to lead morale. That's another myth. People think, well, I can't lead morale. I'm not an extrovert. I'm more introverted. Leading morale is not about, being a cheerleader with a pom-pom. It's about treating people with dignity and respect. And I know plenty of introverts who do that extraordinarily well. Introverts' challenge generally is just that they have to increase their communication frequency to let other people know what they're thinking and sooner. And that is a challenge. And that's another, I'd love to come back sometime.
Yeah, we'll have to do,
extroverts.
Yeah. You see, I just want to say something about this conversation with Chris now, because it's not something like Kate just said, it's not something that I'm always conscious of. And it's sad to think that I am doing something more than other people, because I don't believe I'm doing all that much. We stay very busy. So listen to me. We stay very busy. I don't always say to Chris, it could be an emoji.
Right.
It ain't big. It might be
Yeah.
where her daughter's does something really great and we go out to lunch and celebrate. It's not
Right.
always directed at her, and it's not something that I even think about all the time.
Right.
But it's so for all of you out there, it's very important to realize that I'm sad to think that a lot of people aren't doing it, but at the same time, it ain't hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy.
It is, and in this book, what I've done, because there are people who have different levels of intuition. What I've done, I've put into this book. I mean, there are checklists, there are how-tos. Basically, this is a how-to guide to do everything that we've talked about today and more.
So, Kate, we're not almost going to be out of time. So, why don't you tell everybody just a little bit more of, and hold on, Chris, where they can find you,
Mm-hmm.
what they'll find, and why they should even look for you.
Sure. Well, basically, I have a website, katenasser.com, and there's video footage out there. I have a YouTube channel that has even more videos. I bring in certain of those to the website, to feature those clips. I have a very active blog. I blog at least once or twice a week. And basically, everything that I do is all focused on positive human interaction for success in business. And then I have people who come back to me and say, we could use this in our everyday life. And I say, thank you, because that is what I ultimately want. And so, it's this book that I've published just a couple of months ago. It's the chats that we do on Twitter. It's my workshops, my keynotes, my individual coachings. The bottom line is, if you really want to improve your human interaction, as Marilyn just said, it ain't hard. And I can teach you the skills to do it. Whether you are highly intuitive and you just want to know how to sort of reel in your antenna, or whether you don't have very much intuition and you need the exact list of what to say and not to say, that's in that book as well. So I hope that you find it as valuable as so many people have. It's got great reviews on Amazon, so I'm happy.
Good. And I would say that some of the time, some things you instinctively know, but you don't know, So sometimes
Exactly.
it's really good to have these things validated.
I think so. I mean, it's interesting because I just had a very recent experience where somebody validated without knowing it. They don't even really know me very well, but their integrity and their choice of what to do in a particular situation validated what I've always known to be true. And even people like myself who live it and breathe it and all of that, we can use a little validation ourselves, because we get assaulted constantly with, this is all touchy-feely baloney and it doesn't really matter. So to have others validated every so often gives me a little boost once in a while.
Absolutely. So, it's nice to hear from Chris too. So hold on. You have my book? Okay. So I have now 2 books on Amazon, just so I can let you all know. The first one, In Just One Afternoon, Listening to the Hearts of Men. Great, emotional, fabulous stories about men, from men. And the next one is In Just One Afternoon, Listening to the Hearts of Twins, which is just, the stories are amazing. I could not stop interviewing twins or members of twins. There's like 40 stories in there because they're just incredible. And they're both on Amazon in Kindle and paperbacks. Please tell me what you think. And the next one I'm doing is about millennials. So my ears were perked. So next book is In Just One Afternoon, Listening to the Hearts of Millennials. So if you know anyone in the millennial years, please reach out to me. I have some, but I would love to have more. And they don't filter what they do. It doesn't matter. As long as they're millennials, I'll find the story. And if they do have an interesting story, great, let me know. But if you just know a millennial, let me know that too. So Kate, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today. And it was a lovely conversation. I loved every minute of it.
I love coming on your show.
Thank
and
you.
To be able to come on here and talk about leading morale was extra special for me today too.
Good. Thank you. So everyone, don't forget to go visit Kate on Twitter. And at Kate Nasser, People Skills Coach, you will find her. She does some really cool things, and you'll see her there. And her book, again, is on Amazon. And Chris is working for me, and I love her. So anyway, with that, I love you all, and thank you, I'm none too. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.